The problem usually doesn't start in the workshop. It starts before the first cut. Most people think wasted lumber happens because of bad cuts, lack of skill, or cheap tools. But that's not what actually causes it. The real issue is what happens before the saw even turns on. You pick a project. You find a plan that looks complete. There's a diagram, a few measurements, maybe even a materials list. It feels like enough to get started, so you buy the wood, clear your weekend, and begin. At first, everything seems fine. You make the initial cuts, lay out the pieces, start assembling. Then something small happens. A measurement doesn't quite match the diagram. A joint feels slightly off. You double check, and now you're not sure which number is right. So you make a decision, close enough. That's the moment things start to break. Because in woodworking, small errors don't stay small. A difference of 1/16 inch at the start can turn into gaps, misalignment, or pieces that simply don't fit later. So you adjust, trim a little more, force a joint, try to compensate. And each adjustment moves you further away from the original plan. Now the pieces don't align. The structure isn't square. And suddenly you're not building anymore. You're fixing. This is where most lumber gets wasted. Not in the first mistake, but in the chain reaction that follows. And the frustrating part? It doesn't feel like bad planning. It feels like something you did wrong. So you slow down. Measure again. Try to be more precise. But the issue isn't precision. It's that the plan never gave you a reliable structure to begin with. Most woodworking plans fail in subtle ways. They skip steps that seem obvious. They show the final result, but not the assembly order. They include measurements, but not how those measurements interact. So you're left filling in the gaps. And every gap you fill is a guess. It's like building a puzzle without seeing the full picture. You might get some pieces right, but eventually, something won't fit. And when that happens in woodworking, you can't just move a piece. You have to cut again. And once you cut, there's no going back. That's where the real cost shows up. Extra trips to the lumberyard, buying more material than expected, restarting parts or entire projects. And over time, it adds up. Not just in money, but in time, energy, and motivation. That's why so many projects end up sitting unfinished. Not because people lack skill, but because the structure guiding them wasn't solid. The real issue isn't cutting. It's planning. More specifically, the quality of the plan you're following. A complete plan doesn't just tell you what to build. It removes uncertainty. It shows you the exact sequence. How each piece connects. What depends on what. So instead of guessing, you're following a path that's already been tested. And that changes everything. Because when the plan is clear, the process becomes predictable. Cuts line up, parts fit, assembly flows. And suddenly, you're not correcting mistakes, you're making progress. That's the difference most people never experience. They think woodworking is trial and error. But in reality, a lot of that trial and error comes from incomplete planning, not from the craft itself. Once that changes, the entire experience changes. Projects move faster. Materials go further. And instead of hoping it works, you start expecting it to. If you want to go deeper into how this works, there's a structured breakdown in the description that walks through how complete plans are actually built, and why they eliminate most of these issues. And if you want to keep understanding how this process really works, you can subscribe for more videos like this. Because once you see what's happening behind the scenes, it's hard to go back to guessing.